Hi, this is Medi Ivy Harrison, and I do Medi Ivy mentorships. If you look up my website, mediivymentorships.com, you can see I do a 10-week program with authors. I check in with them weekly, give them goals, then give them daily kind of kicks in the pants to help remind them to get their work done. And I help them shape a book. I help them deal with specific problems, character development, plot twists, dialogue, emotion. Those are some of the most common things that I work with writers on in terms of writing skills. And one of the things that I do talk about sometimes is whether or not it's useful to do an outline. So I'm doing a scary thing today. I have never done this before. At least I haven't done a recording of me doing this before. And I hope it works out okay. You're going to get to see me in real time work on an outline. Now, I will preface this by saying, and you'll see this when I start sharing my screen, I have done some pre-work. I have done about an hour of sitting down and doing some pre-work on the outline because I was scared. And I didn't want this to be a giant flop. And also I was afraid that there would be a lot of hemming and hawing as I was trying to think of things. So I was trying to do some pre-work so that, I can intensely jump into scenes and chapters. So I had not thought of this idea until today. And I was on a walk. Let me just say that walks are a great way for you to get your brain started. Silence in general, it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people have ideas in the bathroom, because they are alone there and it is quiet. And then that's when your brain starts thinking. So walks are the thing for me. If I'm stuck, I often will go on a walk. And in this particular case, I wasn't stuck on anything. I'm almost finished with the project. And of course, that's when my brain starts going, ding, ding, let's work on new stuff. I already have several Linda Wallheim novels in progress, which would probably need to come before this one does. But I am, and I don't know if this book will ever be published. I'll just say that in advance. But as I was walking, it came to me, hey, it might be really useful for people to see what it is like real time for me to try to hammer out a really basic outline of a book. Now, I'm also going to preface this by saying, I don't outline every book in this way. Often if I'm going to try to outline a book, I will do one of two things. One of my standard methods is to write the first 50 pages-ish, like so that I get to know who the characters are. It might be more than 50 pages if there are multiple characters. If there's a single character, I feel like I can usually get to know that character in 50 pages, see how they talk, see how they interact with other people, figure out what their goals are, what their needs are, who they are, and maybe have some idea in my head of what direction I'm going to point them in. So I'll do like a 50-page, 5-6 chapters, and then I'll sit down and try to outline the rest of the book from that point on, chapter by chapter. That said, it's frequently true that I will realize I've left out some sections and I'll have to add chapters in. And then sometimes I will find that some chapters are put together. Sometimes I've gone off. Sometimes the outline is leading me slightly in the wrong direction, or I know that there are certain chapters in the outline I want to leave, but others that I want to take out, and I'll put some in. So that's one way that I outline. The second way that I will outline, if I'm doing a book that is kind of brand new, is I will just have like a 3-chapter outline ahead, meaning here I am working, I'll do the first 50 or 60 pages as a pantser. I'm a seat of your pants kind of writer. And I will just wing it, see what happens throw my characters together in a world. And I figure things out as I go along. I think my subconscious sometimes does a lot of work behind the scenes that I'm not always aware of. But what I will try to do is before I leave for the end of the day, I will try to have the first sentence for the next chapter, so that when I wake up in the morning, I'm not terrified by, I have no idea what I'm going to write today. So first sentence of that chapter, and then I will have the next 3 chapters just briefly outlined with like 3 to 4 sentences. And you'll see how many sentences I tend to have for chapters as I work you through this. And then, each day when I come to the end of a chapter or 2 that I've written for the day, I will then look at the chapters that I have planned out and decide whether or not those are the right chapters at least for where I am currently when I'm, at the end of my work for the day, and I will modify them. Usually they get modified. So this is me saying to you, an outline is a useful tool. It helps you deal with some problems in advance. It also helps you deal with creative anxiety. It is not a cure-all. It does not fix all your problems. It does not mean that you will not have to do massive revisions. It means none of those things. But it is a way for you to start grappling with the issues in a book without having to do it on a 300-page manuscript. And I have found it to be really useful now that I'm in a situation where I have an editor and an agent. It's really useful for me to be able to say, okay, I have an outline. It will be more polished than the one that I probably will show to you at the end of this. But I can send off an outline to them and say, okay, what do you think? Do you like this? Where can we change it? And that allows them then to give me feedback before I've spent hundreds of hours writing a manuscript that then I have to take giant sections out of because they're not working. In this way, on this level, they can say, chapters 5 and 6, no, that's not working. We're not going to put that in. Or is this how you really want this character to end up? Those kinds of questions can be solved before I've devoted a lot of time and energy to scene by scene recounting of an actual manuscript. So this is a new skill for me. I learned how to outline in 2017. I had tried to outline before that a couple of times. It didn't work. I lost all interest in the manuscript. One of the things that I have discovered to my great joy is that this method of outlining does not take away from me the pleasure of uncovering the story. There are still things, there are still surprises that happen. There are still characters that unfold, and I still enjoy it. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to share screen with this outline. So you will be able to, okay, so you can see my outline. And like I said, I did some pre-work on this, about an hour's worth of pre-work. And like I'm working with a really, really loose title, just release. Okay, so just general basic big picture stuff. Kurt is being released as bishop a few months early, mostly at his own request. He's spoken to the stake president about his concerns and about his family situation. If you don't know these stories, Kurt has a son who is openly gay, and he has another son who has left the church and has some complicated relationships with polygamous Mormons. A general authority comes into town and will be picking a new bishop. So as I was brainstorming, I'm just going to let you in on a little bit of the brainstorming that happened while I was on my walk. I was brainstorming, like, what are some interesting Mormon things, like uniquely Mormon things that I could write a book around? And one of the first ones that came to my head was Trek. And I may yet write a Trek book. I think that the Mormon Trek experience is fascinating. I think it would be not that hard to have a murder to happen on a trek. For those of you who are not Mormon and don't know what Trek is, let me briefly explain that it's an attempt to recreate the pioneers' journey from basically Nauvoo, where Joseph Smith was martyred, to Salt Lake City, which is where they established Deseret, which Brigham Young was the leader over until the United States took over that control of that land. It had originally belonged to California. And I mean, obviously before it had belonged to the Native Americans. But so then Mexico took control of that section of land, and then the US took control of it. And then Brigham Young was a governor of this territory for a while. Okay. So Trek is this attempt to, often people create hand carts that people push. Hand carts are these very small wagon-ish kinds of things, but instead of being pulled by an animal like oxen, they're pushed by humans. So you can only have as much stuff in them as a human can push. And there were handcart companies that came across the plains. This is like 2,000 plus miles of territory that they came across walking, and they had to keep their provisions in the handcart in order to survive and to get all the way through. So they had to keep enough in that handcart to survive. So, I mean, when we do Mormon Trek, where we do these recreations, they're not months long, but they're usually 3 days to 7 days long. And generally it's a youth experience. So it targets the 12 to 18-year-old youth range, both boys and girls. And sometimes there are special things like the women's pull, which is when the boys won't pull the handcarts and only the girls pull the handcarts over this big long hill. Weird things. Sometimes they have pretend babies that people carry, and sometimes they bury the babies. Anyway, this is all me saying I would be fascinated and would love to write a book about Trek. So I thought about outlining a book about Trek. I also thought about outlining a book that had to do with food storage. But I landed on this idea that that choosing a new bishop is a process that I think is distinct to Mormonism. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about that in a book. And since I had previously decided that Kurt is going to go through a faith crisis, and books that are previous to this one, I thought that would be a good moment for him to be released as bishop. And then there's this process of getting a new bishop in. So a general authority comes to town, we'll be picking a new bishop. Kurt would normally be asked to give suggestions for a short list to interview. So the general authority is going to be interviewing these people, and hopefully we'll have some kind of spiritual experience that will indicate to him who the new bishop is supposed to be. And Kurt would normally be asked to like make some suggestions because he knows people in the ward, and the general authority doesn't know them personally. But in this case, he is not. He's worked around. He has a meeting with the general authority, but he's very uncomfortable in it and feels like he's dismissed. He wants to know if the general authority has really read the gospel topics essays and has grappled with historical issues. What if Joseph Smith didn't translate the gold plates? What if he lied about polygamy? What if there was never a visitation by Peter, James, and John as angels and the priesthood wasn't restored? What if the temple rites were just made up by Joseph after he went to a Masonic lodge? What if the church is a fraud, or best just a nice social club? So Kurt is asking these questions. The GA ends the meeting early and walks out abruptly and refuses to engage. Okay. So then my next question is, this is the murder mystery, right? Who is murdered? So I debated a little bit. Again, I'm trying to describe to you the kind of pre-work that I did. One of the things that I try to think about when I'm doing a murder mystery is who would the most people have reason to want to kill? Because obviously, if only one person wants to kill the person who's murdered, then you don't have a very long suspect list, and the book will not be very long. Also, you want to ask yourself who has the most power. I think those are interesting questions. Or maybe sometimes who has the least power. Who would be the saddest person to die? And who would be the least sad person to die? I think these are all interesting questions. Your murder mystery is going to come out differently depending on how you answer them. So I ended up deciding that the GA is the person who's the general authority is the person who's going to be murdered. So then that leads me to like, who are the suspects? So general authority's wife, possibly children, stake president, Kurt's own stake president, businessmen associated with the GA, possible girlfriend of the GA. Is he having an affair? Then that would come out. And bodyguard of the GA. In particular, Mormon apostles have bodyguards who protect them and are with them almost all the time. Kurt obviously is going to be a suspect. And I think in the background, we're going to have to ask the question, are other GAs potential suspects? Does this GA know something about other people that they would want to keep silent? Okay, so I have this climactic moment, and it may sound dumb because it's not particularly, it's not leading me in a particular direction yet, right? A murder mystery usually has the most climactic moment when the murderer is confronted in the end and can no longer like lie about who they are. Like the evidence is now made it clear that they are the murderer. But with my Linda books, frequently I have a final gripping scene where Linda throws herself into danger to try to rescue someone or to try to get at the murderer. In this particular case, I was thinking might be fun. Kurt is always telling Linda that she does stupid stuff, which she does do. She acts emotionally. And she throws herself into some things, some situations that are really dangerous because of her passionate heart and her belief in justice. But I thought, would it be interesting to have Kurt do the same thing? Like, he is the one who does something stupid and that he knows better not to do. Now, I have put him into dangerous situations before, but never where he's doing something really dumb. So that's what I wanted to have be the end of this book, that he does something really dumb. And then Linda tries to help him get out of it, and then she gets drawn into the same situation, and then they're both stuck there. And I don't have an answer for how they're going to get out. We'll see if I can figure it out as I go. I always try to have a time of year that I'm targeting. This one is going to be springtime because it's around General Conference. So there's talk of Joseph in the Grove praying, the Aaronic priesthood restoration. All right, just a few other things that I did as pre-work. Changes in Kurt and Linda's relationship. So before you come to this book, Kurt has already been struggling with a faith crisis in previous books. So, but now when this book begins, he begins the moment of feeling like he can no longer remain in the position of authority in the church. Previously, he's been telling himself that that there's still place for him in the church, and that he's still doing good in the church, and that he needs to stay because this is his community and people look up to him, and it would be bad for other people for him to stay. But now he's reached a moment where he can no longer do that in good conscience. So that's what's triggering this. So Linda's frustrated a little bit, even though now she and Kurt are finally on the same page. For a long time, their marriage has looked like it's going down because she doesn't believe in the church in the same way anymore. She has so many problems with various social issues. She's a mama dragon because of her son Samuel, who's gay, and she has a bunch of problems with women's issues in the church, and she just has a lot of problems. And it's been a source of conflict for her and Kurt for a long time. And now Kurt's finally saying to her, yeah, the church has a lot of problems, but they're not the same problems that Linda has seen. So she's frustrated with that. But she has also seen that he carries such a heavy burden, being the bishop who doesn't believe in priesthood authority and temple rituals, or maybe even in the afterlife. And it's so difficult for him on a regular basis. Like, he has to go to so many meetings. Okay. So changes in other relationships. I thought Samuel brings home his boyfriend at some point. So Samuel is openly gay, but he did serve a mission for the church, and he had in his mind that maybe he wouldn't enter into a mixed orientation marriage with a woman, or that maybe he would just be celibate his whole life, but he wanted to stay committed to the church. And this is a moment, I think, in this book where Samuel is going to basically be saying, no, I am not going down that path. I am going to be openly gay, and I'm going to be in a gay relationship. And this, for those who aren't Mormon, this will probably trigger a church court, meaning that he will be excommunicated from the church. Okay, so, and then I have a list of things that have changed in Mormonism that might come out in this book: temple ceremony changes, end of Boy Scouts, child abuse scandals coming out, the gospel topic essays, which I already said Kurt has read, Romney politics. I tried to stay away from specific political things that date the books. So I don't know if I would use the name Romney, but I might be able to talk about COVID or church on Zoom. Might be able to bring up the $120 billion investment account that the church has done nothing with over the last 30 years. And I definitely think I want to talk about the rise of DesNat, which is a far-right Mormon group who can be very threatening and can at least threaten violence online. And they, as far as I know, have not done anything in person, except that there were people from DesNat who were part of the insurrection on the Capitol in 2021 on January 6th. So, like the person swinging the Captain Moroni flag, if you noticed that in the news, you saw something Mormon, those are DesNat people. That's what we call them, Deseret Nation. Deseret, going back to the term that Brigham Young used to describe the Utah territory that he had control over. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try now to write a chapter by chapter outline, and I don't know how much talking I'm going to do. Sometimes I talk to myself. You will see how it goes, and maybe I'll have to edit this. So chapter 1, I think, needs to be some sort of trigger moment that causes Kurt to decide that he can't be bishop anymore. He comes home to talk to Linda after someone in the ward has had a child die. Has been diagnosed with cancer. Let's see, what else could they have happened to them? I know, someone in the ward, after a woman in the ward who was widowed previously, wants to remarry, but is struggling with the church's rules about temple marriages for women sealed already to a husband. So if you're not Mormon, then maybe you don't know. The church doesn't practice polygamy anymore, but it still exists in the doctrine and beliefs about heaven that men will have multiple wives in heaven, possibly that God has multiple wives. And what that means is that men are allowed to be sealed to multiple women. So if it were a widower and he'd previously been sealed to his wife, there would be no problem with him being sealed to another woman. And in fact, the prophet of the church, President Nelson, and his second in command, Dallin H. Oaks, are both sealed to second wives. And they're sealed to both wives in the temple with the belief that they will be with both of them for eternity. But women, because this polygamy, it only works one way, cannot be sealed to men. So Kurt can't see any way to help her with her problem. He can't change the church's rules on temple marriage or polygamy afterlife. And I'm going to just make a note to myself, possibly write this scene from Kurt's point of view. This just came to me as I was working here. And all the rest of the Linda books, it's always from Linda's point of view, but it might be interesting in this particular book to either tell the whole book from Kurt's point of view or to alternate. So I'm going to just leave that out there for myself as a possibility. So he comes home to complain to Linda about the situation that seems so unfair and stupid. Ultimately, he tells Linda he's going to ask to be released early as bishop. Linda is upset about this, but also understands. She goes to bed. All right, here I'm gonna divide this. This is gonna be chapter 2. This also frequently happens, just FYI. I start writing and then realize this is probably too much for one chapter. Okay, so we're gonna make this into chapter 2. Wondering what will happen in the ward if it's widely known that Kurt has doubts. She even toys with the idea of selling their house and moving away from the ward, just so she doesn't have to deal with gossip. And then she wonders, is this ridiculous to go to this extreme? Okay, so you know, if you don't know my books, then you may not know that Linda has a friend. She has a couple of dear friends. And I think this is a good chance. Linda wakes up next morning, aware that Kurt is taking the day off work, despite the fact that it's tax time, in order to call the stake president to ask to be released. She goes on a walk with her friend Anna Torstensen. They frequently go on walks together. Anna, so let's see, what would Anna's reaction be? Anna is angry and thinks Kurt should try to hold on to his testimony. And I'm just writing this in here again. Linda and Anna argue in a deeply angry way, and Linda walks away thinking this is the final end of their friendship. And she's also aware that it's possible Anna will start spreading rumors about Kurt's release and lack of belief. She comes home to, is this another chapter? So one of the things I'm just going to say that these are mystery books and they have murders in them. However, there's a lot of other things going on in the story, and that's frequently true in lots of murder mystery books. One of the great things about mystery is that mystery books have very, very long series, and that allows you to develop a world fully with lots of characters in the world, and it also allows you to develop characters in a long-term sense, where the development they're going through is not just over a year, but can be over decades, if you're lucky enough to be a writer who can write about characters for decades. All right, so yeah, so there's going to be a bunch of chapters here before we get to the murder. When Linda gets home, she is upset and finds Kurt in his office. Also upset because the stake president at first refused to release him, offering a blessing instead. And Kurt insisted on being released, and the stake president said that if he released him, he would end up holding a church court for him. Again, this is just coming to me as I write. When you have scenes, you want to stage dramatic conflict in them. So Kurt has to face the likelihood that he will lose his membership in the church entirely, as well as temple blessings, sealings to children. He and Linda decide that they're gonna have to tell their sons what's going on so they're not blindsided. I'm just gonna put another note to myself in here, could be written from Kurt's POV. All right, here we go. I'm gonna move directly to GA comes to town to pick a new bishop. Kurt is aware that they are holding interviews with other priesthood holders in the ward. He is not invited to give his recommendations and is in fact kept far away from everything. The stake president, his counselor, Rika, comes over to ask Kurt to give up his keys to the church building This is another chapter that could be from Kurt's point of view. Kurt is angry enough that he goes directly to the church building to demand to speak with the general authority. To his surprise, he is allowed into the room and has a private audience. Okay. All right, then we move to chapter 6. It becomes clear to Kurt shortly that the GA is talking to him because he wants to find out if Kurt has infected other members of the ward and who they might be. Kurt tries to ask questions about his various problems with history and truth claims, and is cut off. The GA ends up walking out abruptly, leaving Kurt alone in the room. Kurt waits to see if he'll come back, but he doesn't. Kurt eventually goes home. And then I'm going to put in again, possibly from Kurt's POV. Honestly, I'm not sure at this point anymore if this cannot be from Kurt's point of view, because it'd be tedious to have this many scenes from that Linda is non-participating in, where Kurt would then have to recount to her what happens. This is one of the problems that you have with a first-person narrator, by the way, or anytime you choose a single point of view character, because you can only show scenes from that character's point of view. This is why most writers don't choose a single point of view character. They may choose a main point of view character, but then they will have chapters where things happen that character is not in, because it's hard to have a gripping story in which a single character is always in every scene. So like it's just a problem. It's a writerly problem that you have to deal with from the very beginning. Okay, Kurt goes home and rants to Linda. The next morning, they wake up to a knock on the door by Detective Gore, our old friend. She's a Black woman who works in the Draper Police Department, and she has a relationship with Linda that's not always a positive one. She gets frustrated with Linda a lot. Okay, so she tells them that the GA was found murdered early this morning at his hotel room. Now, I am not much of a one for having like fancy methods to kill people. So I have told people before that basically the people in my books are always going to be either shot, strangled, or stabbed. In this case, I'm going to say he was suffocated. It's also not a very complicated thing. You can imagine it happening, probably in his sleep. She is trying to figure out who might have had access to the room. She asks Kurt if he had a key to the room, which Kurt denies. But this leads to Kurt and Linda wondering later if the GA lost his key card and where it might have been lost. Okay, but the interview with Detective Gore ends with her telling Kurt he's a suspect and that he's not to leave town and not to go back to the church building, which is the last place he saw the GA. Okay, so chapter 7, and now we have a dead body and a murder. Okay, now this section of the book is the suspects. Obviously, I have always had in this series an amateur detective, and Detective Gore is pretty close-lipped. She does not necessarily share the information that she knows about the case with Linda, but sometimes she does need Linda's help because Linda has been an insider within Mormonism, and Detective Gore is not a Mormon. And she sometimes is frustrated with the way the Mormon hierarchy works and how it excludes women, and how sometimes people lie to her in order to sort of keep the good reputation of the church. So that's been a constant theme through the story, through the series. In this particular case, however, Kurt and Linda now are going to be kind of on the outs, so they are not going to be so useful to Detective Gore, except maybe interpreting things for her. So, all right, let's see what happens. I'm about a third of the way into this process. It is taking a while, and I don't know how long it will keep going. And I'm just going to say I'm going to try to push myself through to this end to see if I can get like a working outline and show you how I go through this process and how long it takes and what I do. Okay. So I think this would be a good time for a family moment. I frequently have like family moments. Linda's sons all come over to have a family meeting where they talk to Kurt about church things. Kurt, let's see. Samuel hints at the fact that he's dating someone openly. Kurt is trying to figure out which of his sons will be most hurt if he ends up being excommunicated. Adam and Marie are still fully in. Joseph and Willow are attending, but Joseph has concerns. Joseph has been in a previous book. Zachary is not attending, and Kenneth is already out. I guess that it tells you where everybody is. Adam wants to write a letter on Kurt's behalf to the stake president. Kurt says no. Linda is frustrated that this is all men talking and the women have nothing to do with it. Okay. Food is involved because Linda is always cooking, possibly pastries or pies of some kind, as Linda takes out her frustrations on dough. The daughters-in-law have a chance to chat with her. Usually she cooks alone. Okay. Next chapter, probably go back to the murder. This is one of the things that I do a lot in these books is I'll have a family chapter and then we'll go back to the murder. Kurt is asked to go in for a formal interview with Detective Gore. As he is entering police station, he sees the stake president leaving. He wonders if the stake president is a suspect, or asks Kurt about his last meeting with the GA, if there was any violence between them. From this, Kurt guesses that the body shows some sign of violence. He insists he didn't touch the other man. Gore says that there are 2 witnesses who heard shouting and angry voices, and that one of them claims that a chair was turned over and broken when he came into the room after Kurt left. Kurt insists that this is not true. Okay, again, another chapter from Kurt's point of view. All right. Oh, and then as Kurt leaves the police station, he notices the GA's wife is coming in along, and walking with her is the GA's bodyguard. This is going to be a tricky book because, boy, Linda and Kurt do not have as much information. Okay, now we're going to go to the church court. Kurt goes home to find a letter in his mailbox summoning him to a church court that Monday night. He shows it to Linda, and she is furious. She calls her friend Gwen about it. Gwen suggests that Kurt could just resign and not go to the court. Kurt rejects this idea. When Linda asks if she's also going to be excommunicated, Kurt says probably not. Linda asks if this is because she doesn't have the priesthood, and Kurt admits this is true, but then says that the priesthood is all an invention anyway, so why does it matter? It matters to Linda. Okay, now back to the murder. Let's see, police release the body of the GA to family members for burial. There is a press conference where they admit that there was foul play. The church, let's see, seems to want people to believe that it's someone who came to the hotel room who was otherwise unknown to the GA, perhaps a homeless person or some criminal who targeted him and had taken his card. Detective Gore admits in the press conference that when he returned that night, near midnight, which was 3 hours after Kurt's meeting with him, he asked for a new card and had to show ID. He didn't say what had happened to the she, when asked, she will not say if the police have found the second card, the missing card. Okay. Again, this is a scene that's important for building the story, but it's not particularly gripping because Kurt and Linda do not have much to do with it. That is, they don't have much power in the scene. So we need to give them some power back. So how about Linda goes to ask Detective Gore for more information about the murder. She wants Gore to assure her that Kurt isn't really a suspect, but Gore won't give her anything, and suggests that Linda is once again going too far, and threatens to charge her with obstruction. This seems to Linda like another ending of a friendship that she had held dear previously. Themes of endings and loss throughout this book. Sometimes I write these little notes to myself. Okay, another family scene. Linda starts going online to look at possible homes in other locations. Ogden would be near. Joseph and Willow. Provo would be near Adam and Marie. Salt Lake would be near Samuel, who is at the University of Utah, but no one knows where he will go after he graduates. Kurt says this is all ridiculous, that of course they're staying where they are. Then he opens up his phone and finds out that 6 of his major clients have sent him notice that they no longer need his services, despite the fact that he is in the midst of working on their taxes. They asked him to send along everything he's done to another accounting firm and are not suggesting paying him for his time so far. Kurt tries to reassure Linda this will all blow over and that if it doesn't, he can just retire early. They have enough money to be fine, but of course that doesn't satisfy Linda. Okay. All right, back to the murder. So Linda does what Linda does, right? Linda goes to talk to the GA's wife and ask her about her husband. She finds out that this woman suspected her husband was having an affair with a much younger woman. Linda asks for a name and ends up going off to talk to the woman who is horrified and says she's not having an affair with him. He's old enough to be her grandfather, and she had been counseling with him after being raped by an old boyfriend. She's convincing enough that Linda leaves it alone and goes home, but continues to wonder if there was someone else who the GA was having an affair with. Okay, now, Kurt goes to his church, his disciplinary council, his, what is the new name for it that they have? They used to call them courts of love, then they were disciplinary councils. Oh, and membership, is it council? On Monday night, he has a chance to defend himself, but looks around the room at the faces of these men he's served with for so long and can't find it in himself to try to take away their faith. So he just says that he's sorry, that he can't leave anymore, and he and the stake president probes to ask him if he has committed some sin that needs clearing up. Kurt is angry enough that he brings up the question of the GA having an affair. That ends the court immediately. Kurt is sent out to where Linda is, and they wait for only a few minutes for the final decision. Kurt is excommunicated. Linda decides to resign her membership, but Kurt asks her to wait for a while to reconsider this decision because of the impact on their sons who remain in the church. Another chapter from Kurt's POV. Okay. All right, we need to get back to the murder. Detective Gore asks Kurt, let's see, comes over to talk to Linda and Kurt together, and go over the timeline once more. The 3 missing hours are brought up. She wants to know if Kurt could have the timeline wrong. He insists he does not. Linda backs him up. She remembers when he came home. And Gore hems and haws a bit. That she doesn't know if the church wants the murderer found and is feeling pressured to point the finger at someone who already has a criminal record. He doesn't want to do this and believes that the murder was committed by someone close to the GA. She asks Linda and Kurt they think who they might imagine capable of this. Linda tells what she knows about the possible affair, and Gore thanks her to know about this possibility. Kurt asks if she has any other suspects, and she demurs. Kurt presses to ask if it's possible that bodyguard he saw going in, or even the stake president, might be the murderers. She pushes back and says that as far as she knows, it could be anyone in power in the church. It could be any of the leaders of the church who are apparently covering up for each other. Okay. Linda and Kurt have a conversation about what he knows about the dead GA and who he might have as enemies within church. Ultimately, Kurt thinks this is so unlikely as to be nearly ridiculous. It isn't so sure. She goes back to visit the GA's wife and asks her if there are any GAs who disliked her husband, or if anyone else she knows might have held a grudge against him. GA's wife has just found out that she has no money to live on. All of her accounts have been cleaned out. She has no retirement. The house has been remortgaged. Hilt. She knew that her husband was involved in an investment scheme and points Linda in that direction. Anna Torstenson comes over to try to talk to Linda with the Relief Society president. They want to know if Linda is going to stay in the church and to set out some ground rules for her participation. If she does so, Linda is furious again. She asks them to leave. Tell her that she is not welcome at church again unless she talks to them first. Linda goes on a solo walk around the ward, saying goodbye in her heart to this place that she has loved for so long. No longer so now back to the murder. Kurt hears about the investment scheme and he goes to confront the manager who took GA's and his wife's money and tries to insist that it's all well invested and will come back to them with interest. Kurt accuses him point blank of murder. He doesn't take this well and attacks physically. Kurt gets away, but is left wondering what kinds of wounds were on the body of the GA that led Thor to wonder if Kurt had beforehand. Clearly, there was some kind of altercation. So clearly, GA was not killed at the time of the altercation, but by someone who had planned to get the key and follow him to his hotel room. Okay, another chapter from Kurt's POV. Okay. Now, as I get deeper into this more intense section, I tend to leave out quite so many alternating chapters of the family because I want to like ramp up the suspense. So we're going to stay with the murder question. So Kurt goes back to the wife and asks her more questions about the finances. Answers she gives are not adequate to him. He thinks there's something else going on. He wants to look into it more, but she asks him to leave. He notices the bodyguard and begins to wonder if the only affair going on was one between the wife and the bodyguard. He goes home and does a little internet search on the bodyguard and finds out that he was previously what would he have done previously? Member of maybe a pastor of another church, and left in disgrace after having an affair. He also ran off with a bunch of money. It's never been accounted for. I don't know. Like I say, I'm winging it here. So Kurt goes home and tells Linda he has to talk to Detective Gore. Linda wants to know what he has found out. I guess he doesn't go home because he's already home. He tells Linda. He won't tell her because he says that it will just put her into danger. This makes her furious. Linda gets furious a lot, right? Again. She follows Kurt to the police station and lurks outside, which is why she is there to see the wife and the bodyguard going in, arriving together but going in separately and being physically very intimate with each other. She is eager to share this with Kurt until he comes out and is closed-mouthed about everything that he and Gore talked about. Linda remembers the last time Kurt and Gore left her out of the loop. She is too mad to share anything with him. Okay, here we're getting nearer to the end. Kurt I'm gonna have to switch this here. This has to be a different chapter because I need to, Gore tells him that the investigation is nearly over. Pressure on her to close it is too great. She's to say it was likely not a murder, but the result of some kind of sexual misadventure. Evidence has been brought to her about the GA sleeping with prostitutes known to have to service BDSM clients. Kurt wants to know if this evidence is reliable at all, but she won't share it with him. He tells her that he never thought he'd see the day that she helped cover up a murder, help shield the church. She tells him he doesn't know what he's Okay, so then Linda's following him to the police station. Okay, so, I mean, I set out originally 25 chapters. I have no idea, of course, when I'm writing a book, if there's going to be 25, but, you know, it's a number. I often will write 10-page chapters. So that would mean the book would end up being about 250 pages-ish. Okay, so we're at this point where I need to start wrapping up the story. So we need to get to this dramatic scene that I have set up in my head, as I want it to be the end of the book, that that Kurt gets himself into a situation. I appear to have reached a point where I know who the murderer is. I'm just going to point out to you that when I started writing this, I did not know who the murderer was, and that is frequently the case when I write my books. And it's one of the reasons why my editor asked me to start doing outlines for these murder mysteries, because if you write an entire novel, a murder mystery novel, without an idea of who the murderer is, then you don't put in the right clues and stuff, and that causes a lot of like having to rewrite. So this is one way for me to get to who the murderer is, figure out who the murderer is, and then like work that back into previous parts of the manuscript. It's also a chance for me to like try out, like, what if it's this person? And I can also change the murderer in later revisions. I will admit, I'm not sure that I've ever done that, change the actual murderer. I tend to change other things. But there's no reason I couldn't change the murderer if I decided that a different murderer was more interesting. Okay, so now we have to get Kurt into trouble. So Kurt leaves the house. Well, he thinks Linda is asleep, to go talk to the wife and bodyguard again. He finds them in a state of undress, shall we say. And she opens the door to the house. Kurt busts in, because he's Kurt, and demands to know what's going on. She admits that she was having an affair with the bodyguard, but says that the GA knew about it and that he was gay. He told her the truth a few years after they were married. He managed to father 2 children with her, but other than that, has had his own affairs on the side. I'm inventing this right now, right in the moment. She stopped asking questions because it was too painful. He wanted to come clean about his sexual identity, but the more authority he got in the church, more impossible it became to do that. Kurt hears the story and realizes this could well be Samuel's future. It isn't what he wants. Okay, here we go. Again, I'm gonna say Kurt's POV, and I need to go up and add that here. Kurt's POV. Okay. Kurt goes off to find who the GA's latest lover might be. He goes to the stake president, ask for help. The stake president is angry, is combative, and at first tries to call Kurt a liar. Then he admits that he had seen the GA and another man in an intimate embrace at the GA's hotel room of the murder. Kurt realizes now that he is with the murderer and that he is in danger. He doesn't know how to, he tries to get away, but now he knows too much. The stake president starts punching Kurt and backs him into a corner. Kurt is forced to fight. This is also Kurt's POV. In the end, Kurt hits the stake president hard in the face and he goes down. Kurt fears for a moment that he's killed the man, but finds the pulse. He calls Kurt calls Detective Gore and confesses everything that happened. She comes over and with police officers who take Kurt in, who, let's see, put Kurt in handcuffs, take him away. Linda, see, now I'm changing the ending because I said I wanted to have that ending where Kurt does something stupid, and this is something stupid, but I don't end up having Linda in this situation with him. I guess I ended up deciding that's not what I want. Linda comes by after the fact and begs Gore to let Kurt go because she knows he's not a murderer. Stake president gets taken away on a stretcher to the hospital. He may or may not live. He has a heart condition. Linda insists that Kurt was attacked first. There's no one else to prove that. Okay, chapter 26. The stake president wakes up but says he has no memory of anything that happened. He refuses to accuse Kurt of doing anything to him. Gore gives up the case and decides that she is going to move elsewhere where there are no Mormons. Is looking for a new job. She isn't interested in talking to Linda about any of this. The GA's murder remains as it was. The stake president won't, says he fell down the stairs and Kurt found him there. Oh no, I can't say that because he wasn't aware. The stake president recovers and comes home from the hospital. He refuses to speak to Kurt and in fact threatens to get a restraining order against him. Kurt suspects that won't happen, but gives up trying to talk to him. 27. Samuel brings over his boyfriend to meet Kurt and Linda before the rest of the family. He's delightful and is opposite Samuel in so many ways. Not at all religious, raised in a secular family, parents knew he was gay from an early age. He works as a journalist. He wants to get a job in Utah for one of the local newspapers, and Kurt and Linda worry that's a terrible idea for him after what they after Samuel goes home, they sit together and think again about selling their home, moving to a place where no one knows them, and Kurt trying to reopen his business there without connections to Mormonism. That's it. That's the end. As I said, this is a quick and dirty attempt at showing you how I do an outline. And like I said, I had done some preparation work beforehand. There were lots of things that were surprising to me, and that's how an outline works. It's one of the fun things about an outline. It's an exhausting thing. I don't know if I will keep any of the one things in this. I don't know if this is the right story to tell, but I am intrigued to tell it now. I do sort of intuitively do plot twists and turns. That's one of the things that you do in a mystery novel. You have these suspects, and just when you think you know who it is, then it turns out, no, it's this other person. And then just when you think it's that person, no, it actually turns out to be this other person, because each of the suspects needs to have a reason to want that person dead. So in that sense, mysteries are dark because all of the suspects have to have reasons that they want the person dead. So all of the people that you meet in the book are people who are suspects, who are potential murderers. And I believe that most people are capable of murder if put into the right circumstances. So I don't think you have to be an extremely nefarious person or a particularly physically strong person or somebody who has experience in killing before in order to kill. So I sort of generally go with the assumption anybody could be the murderer, and they just need motive. To me, it's all about motive. And so you sort of do these twists and turns with motive, that you don't know this person's character. Oh, and then now it turns out that there's this person. And so that means that this other person might want to kill them. So I hope this has been useful to you to see how I do it. I encourage you to try out outlining, see where your subconscious takes you, let yourself make some leaps. And if you find out, if you look back at this, as I will probably do, in another couple of weeks, and you say, no, that's not how it's going to end, then you can take out these chapters at the end, or you can take out some of the chapters in the middle. And as you're working through the book, you'll end up, feeling your way through if this is the right pacing. Pacing is something I think is hard to figure out, a little bit harder to figure out in an outline than in an actual manuscript. So those are things that you still have to figure out. The characters, I think, are things that are still fungible. Like they're not set in stone, and characters are the reason why I love writing books. And so for me, this kind of an outline makes me just want to get more into the book. I want to tell the story now. I want to figure out about these characters. So we'll see. I generally work on an outline like this for a week, kind of polishing it up, figuring out if this is what I really want. I let myself, like my subconscious brain, sleep on it several times over, and then I'll probably send it to my agent and or editor and see what they think about it. And then when I have feedback from them, I'll tweak it again, and then I'll start working on it. It will take me anywhere from 2 to 3 months to actually flesh out an outline like this into a full book. So that's how the process works. I hope that it works for you.